Every 10 years, on years ending in 0, the U.S. Census Bureau conducts a population count of the United States in all 50 states, the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, and the island areas. The results of this census determine apportionment, or the process of dividing the 435 seats in the U.S. House of Representatives among the 50 states, redistricting, or the process of redrawing the maps and lines within each state that divide up congressional and state legislative districts, and funding, or the distribution of billions of dollars of federal funds for things like schools, hospitals, infrastructure, job development, and placement programs. Mandated by the Constitution, the first census was conducted in 1790 under President George Washington to apportion the 105 seats in the House among the then 15 states. The number of House seats has increased with the admission of new states to the Union. In 1913, Congress set the number of seats to 435, which is what it remains today. Every 10 years, the 435 seats are distributed among the states to reflect changes in population movement or growth. So how exactly are the House seats apportioned? The apportionment count in each of the 50 states includes the state's total resident population plus overseas federal employees who list that state as their home address, including military and civilian federal employees. The resident population includes all people of all ages, including both citizens and non-citizens. The resident populations for the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. islands are not included in apportionment because they do not have voting seats in the House, but this data is included in redistricting criteria. Congress determines the formula for apportionment. Since the first census in 1790, 5 different methods have been used. The current formula, method of equal proportions, was adopted in 1941. To begin, each state is given 1 seat out of the available 435 because each state must have at least 1 seat in the House. After that, the remaining 385 seats are distributed so that each member of the House represents about the same number of people throughout the population. According to the 2020 census, that number is 761,169 people per representative. This is up 7.1% or 50,402 people from 2010. After the 435 seats are apportioned, each state then uses the census data to create legislative and congressional districts to ensure proportional representation in the U.S. House of Representatives, state legislatures, and all the way down to local governing bodies like school boards and city councils. This is called redistricting. These maps last for 10 years until the next population count. The importance of these maps brings redistricting to the forefront of national debate each decade. Who should draw the lines, and how should they be drawn? The goal is to ensure proportional representation based on population and to make sure everyone's vote and interests count as equally as possible. Here are a few rules about how redistricting lines can be drawn. Districts should be roughly equal in population. Districts cannot be drawn in a way that discriminates on the basis of race, and districts should be compact, contiguous, and preserve community interests. Different states entrust different bodies to carry out this difficult and often controversial task of redistricting. With so many criteria, priorities, and factors, redistricting quickly gets complicated. When the people in charge of redistricting have their own political interests at stake, newly drawn districts can be manipulated to favor a particular political party or to repress the political power of a particular racial or ethnic group, especially historically marginalized communities. This act is called gerrymandering, and it's as old as our nation. With sophisticated software and access to voter data, politicians are able to precisely gerrymander districts for their own or their party's benefit. There are multiple ways to gerrymander. 2 of the common techniques are called packing and cracking. Packing occurs when the supporters of a specific party are consolidated into as few districts as possible. These voters will have overwhelming wins in these few districts, but will struggle to make elections competitive in neighboring districts. Packing is often responsible for the oddly shaped district maps that are characteristic of gerrymandering. Cracking, on the other hand, is used to split a strong block of voters within a single community or neighborhood into multiple districts, thereby diluting their voting power. By dividing the community into several districts, these voters will struggle to reach a majority in any one district, and elections will overwhelmingly favor the other party. Cracking is why in some communities, neighbors, sometimes even folks who live across the street from one another, will be part of different districts. Without one unified community to represent their interests, the neighborhood is then unable to advocate for itself as a whole. Gerrymandering is a tool of voter suppression, effectively allowing politicians to choose their voters. The result is an unrepresentative government at all levels. According to the Brennan Center for Justice, it leads to election outcomes that don't reflect what the voters want, uncompetitive races that force politicians to cater to the extremes, and, too often, underrepresentation of communities of color. Targeting the political power of communities of color is often the goal of partisan gerrymandering. With their 2019 ruling on Rucho v. Common Cause, the Supreme Court indicated that gerrymandering for party advantage cannot be challenged in federal court, effectively allowing partisan gerrymandering to continue without consequence. The people should choose their representatives, not the other way around. Because the collection of census data was deeply impacted by COVID-19, traditional means of counting data like door-to-door counting were more difficult. The federal government was then forced to extend the timeline for sending apportionment and redistricting information to states. Census data was released on August 12, 2021, about 5 months later than usual. Now, states face increased pressure to redraw maps in time for the 2022 midterm elections. It's incredibly important to ensure the maps are drawn fairly, especially considering these new maps will directly affect the 2022 election. The combination of delayed census data release, differences in state processes, expedited timelines, and the once-in-a-decade nature of drawing district maps has made redistricting in 2021 especially chaotic and susceptible to gerrymandering. This is also the first time in 6 decades that redistricting will occur without crucial protections of the Voting Rights Act. So what are people doing about it? Well, redistricting reforms are continually advancing in states across the U.S. Independent commissions, greater protections for historically marginalized communities, and increased transparency are all strong steps towards ensuring that redistricting accurately structures our democracy by reflecting the interests and makeup of our communities. Congress has also been fighting hard to pass the Freedom to Vote Act, an expansion of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. To learn more, head to the National Conference of State Legislatures website to find redistricting procedures for your state. You will also be able to find out if your state allows for public input on redistricting. Lastly, you should vote in every election, especially state and local elections. Your locally elected officials are usually the ones responsible for drawing the new political lines that will determine what your political representation looks like for the next decade. There's no off-season for democracy. Sign up for election reminders at rockthevote.org.